All right, welcome everybody to using data notebooks for student choice. I am Emily Bryan. I am a third grade teacher at Shuford Elementary.
And I'm Caldwell.
Kaylee, I accidentally muted you for a second. Can you introduce yourself again?
Yes, I'm Caldwell. I'm also a third grade teacher at Shuford Elementary.
And there are Twitter handles if you would like to follow us on Twitter.
So the first thing we're going to get started with today, we're going to be talking a lot about student managed learning, and we want you guys just in the chat to give us a brief definition of what you feel like student managed learning is. All right, so I'm seeing your answers coming in. Students choose how they want to learn material. Students take responsibility for their learning. They have choice based on their data. Results driven, based on student interest. Keeping track of their growth. Students in control of their own learning. All right, so we have come up with our own definition of what we feel like student managed learning is. So it's when students do take ownership over their learning by reflecting on their data and making decisions based on their needs and their personal preferences. So in order to have a classroom where students are managing their learning, it means that us as teachers have to be willing to give up some of our control in our classroom. We have to be willing to give our students choices, and we have to provide those choices so our students can manage their learning, they can become more invested in their learning, and they can take ownership over what they are learning and how they're learning it. So today we're going to be sharing some different ways that we like to provide choice in our classrooms, so you can take those back and incorporate those into your classroom and help your classroom to be a little more student managed based.
The second piece of what we're going to be talking about today is digital data notebooks. So I want you guys to tell us in the chat, how do you guys feel about digital data notebooks using one of our David faces? And you can tell me the number and then why. I'm seeing a 5 and a 9. An 8. Some more 5s. Some more 9s and 8s. 8 because I need to know more info. 8, not sure how to manage. So when we first started doing our digital data notebooks, we were feeling pretty much 8 and 9 too. We weren't really sure where to start. We weren't sure how to manage either. So I'm hoping today that we will be able to give you guys some tips on how to, where to begin and how to manage it within your classroom. And then I have another 5 that says, have seen it work with great results. I'm excited about implementing in my current year. And that makes me so excited because I personally love our data notebooks. And I think it is very empowering for students. Haley's smiling over there because I talk about data notebooks all the time. um, and I think it's really empowering for the students. So I am excited to share what we have learned about implementing it and hope that you guys are able to do the same. So some of our key components that we keep in our data notebooks is we let our students create a learner profile that is very student-led. They do it themselves. And then we also will track our standard-based data, our testing data, and then we set goals based on those data. And of course, we celebrate achieving any of those goals that we have. So the most important thing with the data notebook is that it is all student-led, that the students are doing it themselves. You will help facilitate, but it is theirs, it is their data, it is their goals, it is their learner profile, and they are doing everything within it.
So the first place that we like to start with our data notebooks are our learner profiles. And this is a great way for us to get to know more information about our students before we're ever able to really have any deep and meaningful conversations with them to build those relationships with them. So this learner profile and the pieces that we're going to show you can be used in a variety of ways throughout the year. So the first part that we introduce our students to is this All About Me page. So on this page, our students are able to do a brain dump and tell us everything they want to about themselves. Anything they want us to know, they will put on this page, and we have access to their data notebooks so we can come back and we can look at this throughout the year. And this is something that they will change throughout the year. So the first part that we have is they can tell us about their family. It can be just, their mom and dad. It can be mom, dad, and siblings, whoever in their family they want us to know about that has like an impact in their life and someone that's important to them, they can add in that section. Then we give them a section where they can tell us 3 cool facts about themselves. So this is just anything that they want us to know. It doesn't have to be specific to anything at all. It's just 3 pieces of information about them specifically that they want us as their teacher to keep in mind throughout the year. Then they've got a section where they put all of their favorites. This is anything that they enjoy doing, anything that they enjoy at the time, and these change a lot throughout the year. So students like to come back and update their favorites as they experience new things, try new sports, read new books, things like that. So this is definitely a piece that changes throughout the year, and we will come back to the favorites part especially to check in on our students and try to incorporate a lot of their favorites throughout the school year into a lot of things we're doing in our class. On the far right side, you can see that there is a place where our students can tell us how they feel like they learn best and what they feel like causes them to struggle to learn. And this is also important for us to come and look at this so we can try to incorporate the things that help our students learn the best. If they work better listening to music, we try to play music throughout the day. If they work better in complete silence, we try to find a silent spot for them in the classroom. If they like to work in groups, we like to pair them with people as much as we possibly can. And if we see that there are some things that they're struggling with, we try to keep those out of the classroom as much as possible. So, and students can definitely come back, and as they experience new things in the classroom, they can update how they learn best and what they struggle with throughout the year. And we can come back and check on that to see if there's different things we can incorporate into our class or things that we need to try to remove from that student's learning area. And then the last thing on their All About Me page is at the bottom, it's something they're looking forward to doing this school year. So it could be a field trip they're looking forward to going on. It could be something that they've heard from a previous year's class saying, oh, we did this, it was so much fun. And they can say, oh, we're looking forward to that too. It could just be something as simple as making new friends or, doing random acts of kindness, something that they're looking forward to. And that's 1 year-long goal or 1 year-long thing that they have set for themselves right there in the beginning that they can come back to and check, and it can change as the year progresses. They can change that as well. So like I said, we like to use this page a lot, especially to incorporate our students' interests and get them invested in their learning throughout the school year. The next piece of their learner profile is their personal goals. So as teachers, we don't just set professional goals for ourselves. We like to set goals for ourselves outside of our jobs. So we try to teach our students the importance of not just setting academic goals for themselves, but also setting goals for themselves outside of the classroom, outside of the school. So this can be any goal that they want to set for themselves. It can be sports related, extracurricular activities, things they want to do at home, or just something new that they want to learn outside of school or try to do. So you can see here, we give them 3 different goals that they can set. So they tell us what those goals are. They don't necessarily have to pick 3 right away. As they go through the year, they can come back and add to this or change it. And then under the goals, we give them a chance to put how they're going to achieve those goals. So not only are they thinking about something that they want to achieve, we also have them thinking about what steps do I need to take in order to make this goal a reality. So this is really good for our students because they can come back and check on this throughout the year. They can say, oh, I forgot about my personal goals. I need to go check on that. And they can say, oh, I actually met that goal. And once they meet a goal, they can add it to their brag board, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And then they can change it and add a new goal on here. Or if they're not quite close to meeting that goal, they can say, okay, let's look at these steps and see if there's something else that I can add in here to help me achieve this goal before the end of the year. So it's just a really good way to get students thinking about not only setting the academic goals for themselves, but goals outside of just learning in general. And then the last part of our learner profile is our students' brag boards. So each of our students will have a brag board in their data notebook. This is where they come to put all of the goals that they accomplished throughout the year. So you can see this student has passed their RL1 post-test. They stopped 3 goals during their soccer game, and they grew from their quarter 1 to their quarter 2 benchmark. So it is a mixture of their personal and their academic goals all in one place. And they've met all these goals, they've done all of these things. And this is a way for them to come and say, hey, I did this, and they can brag on themselves. And we as teachers like to come and look at our students' brag boards so we can find different things to celebrate with our kids throughout the year. So this is an easy way for them to keep track of all of the goals that they meet throughout the year, but it's a way for us as teachers and for their peers to celebrate with them throughout the year. They can pull up their brag board and say, hey, look at what all I've done, and everyone can celebrate with them throughout the year. So the first way that we like to use our learner profiles in our classroom is an early finishers board that we provide for our students. So our students will have a choice of these enrichment activities to complete once they have finished all of their assignments for ELA or for math each day. So we like to incorporate as many of our students' interests on these boards as we possibly can. So they're not only enriching the learning they're doing in class, but it could also be something to help them meet an academic or personal goal that they have set for themselves. So you can see on the ELA example, maybe we have a student that wants to become a better reader. One of their goals is to be a better reader. We have Epic on there where they can read books or have books read aloud to them. There's reading a news article and then creating a video telling what they've learned, so they can read something on there and then tell about what they read. And then we have fluency practice so they can become a better reader and more fluent that way. Maybe we have a student that wants to work on becoming a better writer. So we have where they can research a topic and write an informational journal. Or, they could do some vocabulary practice with Flocabulary. Maybe we have a student whose personal goal is to learn a new language this year, which that comes up a lot in our classes. Our students want to learn new languages. So we add Duolingo on there so our students can, once they're finished with their work, they can go and work on Duolingo and try to learn a new language if they have any free time during the day. Now with math, if we have a student that wants to become better at, multiplication, we've got fact practice on here. We've got, a bunch of different things on our finished board to help build some of the skills that they're doing in class. If we have students who enjoy learning by playing games, we've got a ton of games on the math one that our students can do. And especially Prodigy. We have a lot of students that love to play video games, and Prodigy has been one of the #1 resources our students have enjoyed using for math because it's like a video game and they're learning all at the same time. So they really enjoy doing all of these activities just to get a little more learning or getting closer to meeting their goals after they have finished their work for each day. The next way that we incorporate student choice and their learner profiles into our students' days is through their journal topics. So we like to give our students a lot of choice when it comes to the things that they're writing about in their journals. And so you can see here, the way that we split our writing up for the year, we'll spend 9 weeks on each writing standard and then come back at the end for like a wrap up and review, and they kind of get a little more practice with whichever writing standards they're still struggling with at the end of the year. So we start with narratives, and we like to pull in their All About Me page at that point because they can write about their families. They can use the information about themselves to tell us about themselves. And then we can also pull in some of their interests for some of the more made up narrative writings that we'll do in class as well. Then we move to opinion, where we definitely pull in a lot of our students' favorites during that time. So we'll give them a list and they can tell us about their favorite anything. So on here, we've got favorite sport. So our student can tell us, go back and look at their All About Me page, find their favorite sport, and then tell us about that and explain to us why that's their favorite. And they have no problem with their opinion journals because they can always go back and look at their favorites throughout the year. And we also try to incorporate some of their favorites as some other topics, like do you prefer cats or dogs, things like that. Anything we might hear in class or see on that All About Me page. And then the last thing we do is informational writing. Our students are able to choose a topic that they want to research, and they do all the research for it, they write it, but they get the choice of what topic they want. So they definitely go back to that All About Me and that favorite section to pick which topic they want to write about during that time. And we like to give them new topics every month or so. So we will write the same type of journal for 9 weeks, but every month or so we update the prompts. That way our students aren't just seeing the same prompts and saying, oh, I've already done these 3 that I wanted to do, and I'm not interested in any of the others. So they're not truly giving their best. And we'll update it for special holidays or special events that are coming up. And we'll also try to add in some different read alouds that we're doing in class. And here recently, we've started doing our journals a different way. So instead of giving them a different topic each day that they have to write a full journal for, we've actually started breaking our journals up for our students so they can manage their learning that way as well and pace themselves throughout the week, as long as they have their final product by the end of the week. So the way that we do it is typically on Monday, they will choose their prompt, they will write they'll plan their journal for the week. They'll do a bubble map or whatever other structure their teacher decides to give them to plan out their journal. And then they'll write the introduction on the first day of the week. The second day, they'll write 2 of their body paragraphs using that plan that they made the day before. And then the third day, they will write their final body paragraph and their conclusion. The fourth day is probably our favorite because that's the day that our students get to edit their journals. And they peer edit. So we have them work with a peer. They have a checklist that they look for punctuation and grammar and capitalization and a couple other things. But our students go through with each other and they discuss how their journals could possibly be better, what things need to be fixed. They can say, hey, this is great. I like this. I might try this in my next journal. So they get a chance to see other students writing and not just their own, and they get a chance to critique it and give each other feedback. And then we as teachers will also give our feedback as well. So that way they have all the notes that they need. So on the last day of the week, they've got their final draft that is all nice and neat. And we found that our students have become a lot more invested in writing just because we're not saying, okay, you need to write this whole entire journal in one day. We give them that breakdown and then they are able to pace themselves and they don't feel like they're writing as much every day because they're not. So they are more invested in their writing since we've started doing that. The next way that we incorporate our learner profiles is with some choice boards that we give our students. So you can see here, this choice board is for main idea. It's the same standard. All of our students are learning main idea, showing mastery for main idea by using this choice board, but we have gone through and we've looked at some common interests that we found between our students, and we've put those interests on here as the topics that our students can choose to learn about main idea. So you can see it says that they choose the topic that interests them most. So they don't absolutely have to pick animal shelters if that's not what they want to learn about. They can pick one of the others. And then they only have to choose 2 activities in that row. So not only are we giving them the choice of topic, but we're also giving them a choice of assignments in there as well, so they can show mastery. Not all the students have to do all of the activities. So they can read a book and create a video explaining what they've learned. They can read a book or a passage and answer some questions about the main idea, or they can read a book and write a summary. So not all of our students have to do all of those things to show mastery for those standards. And they don't all have to, do the same topic to show that they've mastered main idea. And we found that our students are more invested this way because they're actually getting to learn about something that they're interested in or something that they want to learn more about, and not just what we've said, okay, this is the activity or the assignment and the topic that we are going to have you do during this time. So our students definitely enjoy being able to choose the assignments that they're doing based on their interests and what they feel like they're the most comfortable doing. The next way we incorporate our students' learner profiles and then some student choice is through flexible seating. So these pictures are definitely from a previous year. Last year it looked a little different, but this is what flexible seating would typically look like in our classrooms. We have different options for our students. They are able to move throughout the day. So if they start in one spot, they don't have to finish the day in that spot. They've got choice throughout the day with where they're sitting, because if a spot's not working for them, they're not going to learn there. So we've learned that if we give them that flexibility to move throughout the day, they typically learn a little better. So the options that we have here, we've got the table that you can see with the colorful dots on it. It's a rectangle table, and it's just got some wobble stools or regular stools or chairs around it. And students who like to work with other students typically tend to go to those tables because they like having someone there that they can bounce ideas off of, someone that they can say, hey, I need a little help with this, and then get back to work. So we've got that option. And then next in the middle, you can see there are some bicycle seats to incorporate a little more movement, but we also have students who like to just sit in the floor by themselves and work. So they'll grab a lap desk or a whiteboard or a clipboard, and they'll just go and find a quiet space somewhere in the classroom, in the floor, that they can sit. Sometimes they'll take this and they'll go and sit under their desk if they chose a desk for the day. But we have students that do like to work alone, so we have those options for them as well. And then the last option you can see is the round table that has been lowered to the ground. These students are sitting on the floor, but they want to work together, so they've got that option to still work there. Now, this does give us an opportunity to incorporate collaboration a lot in our classroom as well, because we can say, okay, if you have a lap desk, you guys are going to work as a group for this activity. If you're sitting at the round table, you're going to work as a group for this activity. If you're at the rectangle table, you're going to work as a group. So it incorporates, collaboration with us easily, because we can just tell them, whoever you're sitting close to, whoever has something similar to you, you guys are going to work together that day. And like I said, our students have a choice to move throughout the day, but we also like to incorporate movement with the wobble stools, the bicycle seats. We have some chair bands in our classrooms as well. And we like to look back at their All About Me page to see how our students learn best and try to incorporate some different types of flexible seating that way. So some easy and free flexible seating ideas that we found that you can just easily do in your classroom. Just let your kids sit on the floor. They can take a notebook, a binder, a clipboard, anything with them that they can write on, and they can just sit on the floor under their desk, out in an open, quiet space somewhere. Just let them sit on the floor. Or you can raise and lower your tables so students can stand up near the back of the classroom and work. If they work better when they're standing, you could also have students who, want to sit on the floor, but they also want to have that table. So those are some easy and free things that we found that worked best for us when we first started with flexible seating, before we started incorporating more of the things that you have to buy, like the lap desk and scoot seats and wobble stools and things like that. So that's just an easy way to get started if you wanted to try some flexible seating in your classroom. The next way that we incorporate our students' learner profiles into their learning is through our hyperdocs. So we will do hyperdocs to enrich our science, social studies, and language standards that we're teaching in class. So there are different types of activities that we add to our hyperdocs to incorporate all of the different learning styles for our students. So some students like to watch videos and learn that way. Some students like to read articles and listen to songs, and some students like to create things or write things. So we like to incorporate all of those into our hyperdocs, so that way all of our students are engaged in some piece of their hyperdoc. And we let our students work on these hyperdocs at their own pace. So they know they have 2 weeks that they need to finish these hyperdocs. If they don't finish, they have that option on the I'm finished board that they can come back to, and they know if they're not finished with a hyperdoc, they need to go and work on that if they get finished with their other work. But they pace it out for 2 weeks and work through each piece. Typically on their own, there might be some things that they need help with, and they'll just go and ask a peer. One thing that we enjoy about this is we like to give our students a choice of how they're going to show their final product based on what they're interested in. So you can see in the pink example that at the bottom where it says apply, the students can create a rap or a movie about supply and demand for this specific one. So we gave them a choice between the rap and the movie. And, if our students come up to us and they're like, I really don't want to write a rap and I really don't want to make a movie, we can work with them and figure out a final product that's going to work for them and going to make them feel comfortable and make them invested in, what they're learning for that. And then they share out with the class. Another way that we incorporate choices is with different parts of the standards they're learning about. So if we have students that are learning about historical figures, we don't give them a whole list of historical figures and say, okay, you need to research all of these parts for all of these people. We'll give them the choice of who they want to research. And they enjoy doing that because we're not telling them you have to do this person. They get to find someone that they're interested in, or someone that shares, something with them, some kind of background or something. And they get to become an expert on that specific person or that specific piece of the standard. And then they share out once they're the expert on that, and they learn about all of the other pieces or all of the other historical figures through their peers when they're sharing out as well. But that's another way we like to incorporate choice. Instead of saying, oh, you have to learn all of these pieces about all of this, we like to give them the choice there. And then we will always refer back to the All About Me page and every part of their learner profile to get ideas for different activities that we can add to these hyperdocs to make them, more interesting for our students and get them more invested in the learning that they're doing with these hyperdocs. The final way that we use our learner profiles and incorporate student choice is with our PBL, so our project-based learning or problem-based learning that we do in our class. We'll do these to enrich our students' learning for the standards that they have already mastered in class. And we like to do the final product activities based on our students' interests, and we like to incorporate different learning styles. So we have a lot of students, like I said, that are creative and like to create things. So they've got the choice of a board game that they can do, or Google Slides that they can do to make some sort of thing to show people at the end how creative they are. Then we have some students that like to be in front of the camera or like to have their voices recorded. They can do a podcast or a news report, and they can share that out at the end. And then there are some students that just want to write about what they've learned and what they found. So they've got an informational writing option. And the fun thing about this is our students will get sent this, and each one of these will be a hyperlink, so our students can click on whichever activity they want to do, and they will have directions that are tailored specifically for that assignment or that activity. So if they click on Google Slides, it's going to walk them through every single piece they have to incorporate into their Google Slides to have a great final product to get the grade that they're hoping for. If they decide they want to do the news report, they'll click on that, and they'll have all the steps listed for them that they need to go through and all the things they need to incorporate for a good news report. And so we found that our students are more invested in doing their final products this way because they've got that choice and they're able to pick whichever one feels more comfortable for them, or whichever one they're more interested in. And then, like everything else, we refer back to their learner profiles while they're doing these, or, as they're doing these, to see if there are any other activities that we feel like we can incorporate throughout the school year for the rest of the PBLs they may do to make them more invested in those as well.
So the next big piece of our digital data notebooks is tracking that data and setting those goals. So when we're first thinking about our data, we are thinking about the end of the year, that EOG score. So for our third graders, they've never taken an EOG before. So we start out with a conversation of, first off, what is the EOG? What does that mean? And what is the possible scores you can get and what each of those means? So once we've talked through that, then we let them set their goal. What do they want to score at the end of the year? Now, we let them choose whatever they want. I do not encourage students to change it just because I think they could do better. I let them keep whatever they want. That is something that is so important about the goal setting, is that the students take ownership of it and you let them choose what they want to choose. Because otherwise you are telling them their goal and then they're not as invested, they're not as engaged, and they don't really care as much about that goal. But when they set it, they want to achieve it. So it's really important just to let them set their goal. Now, this goal can always be changed. So if throughout the year you see a student has surpassed their EOG score with some of their quarterly testing or some stuff you're seeing in class, then you can have that conversation with them and be like, look at this data you have so far. Look at how awesome you've done. Do you think maybe you can do better on the EOG than what you first thought? And have that conversation and put it on them, but do not make them change their goal. It is still their goal, is still what they feel that they want to achieve. So then after we have set that goal, then we think about those steps that we can take to complete our goal and to reach that goal. So when we first do this, it is a whole process. So we will sit down and we will talk about, okay, what are some different things that we can do to reach a reading goal? So we make this giant list on the board as a class, and I take all students' ideas and I'll write them up on that board, and we just talk it out. And what does that mean? And what can we do to reach these goals? And then once everybody has voiced their opinions, once we've gotten our giant list, I tell them to choose 3 ways to accomplish this. So that way those students are choosing the steps that they want to take. Again, I do not tell them the steps that they need to be doing. They are choosing from that list, or if they had another idea, then they can put that down as well. But it is up to them to choose those steps, because that keeps them accountable and that keeps them engaged in that goal. Because I know when people tell me exactly what I need to do to reach my goals, it's not about me at that point. It's about what they want me to do. So it's the same with students. You want them to be able to choose their steps to make sure they are reaching their goals. And so as you're doing this, I definitely will walk around and talk with those students and making sure that they are just choosing 3 things and making sure they understand what those things mean and where to go from there. Now, this is something that I'll refer back to with my students. If I see that, say, they put completing my pathway work on their goals, but they aren't doing that throughout the week, then that is a conversation I have with my students. I'm like, look, we set these steps to reach our goals, and we're not doing these steps. So what are we going to do to make sure we're reaching those goals? And we're constantly referring back to this. So then after we think about the end of the year, then we start to think about our quarterly data. So in our district, we have what is called case 21s. And so we take those every 9 weeks. And for our reading, it's a cumulative. And for our math, it's those standards that we have taught up to that point. So what we do is we'll track that data. So in 3rd grade for reading, we have our BOG. So we will just put it in there, what we score, and then we'll track for all of our other data. And so this little graph is just a table in a Google slide. And so they're just able to fill in the table up to the number that they scored. And so it's a very quick visual for students to be able to see, oh, look, I have made awesome growth, or, oh, I went down a little bit there. So it's a quick way to pull them back and be like, hey, like, let's talk about this. Let's celebrate this growth, or let's think about what happened and how we can continue to improve. So I love this little graph because it's quick and it's easy for them to be able to see what they're doing. So also with our quarterly data, we will be setting those goals. So in the beginning of the year, when we're setting our EOG goal, we also set our BOG goal, just because we take that first thing in the year. And so we set, what do you want to score? And then after we have taken that test and we've got our data back, we're thinking, did we meet our goal? And so then it's either a yes or a no. And then we'll set our goal for the next time. Now, if my student had made a 1 on the BOG and their goal was a 4, I might have a conversation with them about, okay, like, do you want to lower your goal? Do you want to keep it the same? What do you want to do? But I'll just let them choose, but I'll also let them know it doesn't have to be the same goal. They can change that goal if need be. And if they met their goal on the BOG, then I encourage them to go higher for that next quarterly goal, because we can always continue to grow. And that's something that I push with my students, is that we celebrate that growth. And just because we met one goal doesn't mean that we can't continue to grow. So then once we've set our goal for our next quarterly, then we'll think about those steps again. We're constantly making sure that we have steps so that we can hold our students accountable and hold each other accountable. So for that BOG, we'll again probably make a big list on the board and have a big conversation, and then I'll let them choose 3. Once we get to that first quarterly, we've already done it 2 times. So that's when it just becomes a conversation. I'll have the students shout out some ways that they can meet their goals, what steps they can take just as a refresher, and then I'll let them go. By the second and third quarterly, they are doing it independently. We will talk about it and I'll be like, okay, it is time to set our goals. And they just go and do it. I will, of course, walk around and support students as needed, and have conversations with all my students. So this is something that I make sure that I am looking at with my students, because I want to know what their goals are and I want to know what their steps are, so I can help keep them on track and I can help keep them engaged. Because if they're starting to not do their steps, then I'll have a conversation with them. Okay, so why are we not doing this? This isn't what you said you were going to do. It's not about me at that point. It's all about them. So it helps them manage their learning, because they are setting these goals and they're saying, this is what I am going to do. So then once you put it back to them and their words, and they're like, oh yeah, I need to do this. Now, these are definitely flexible. If for some reason you see a student who is doing all their steps, but they want to go and change it, say like, oh, I'm really good at doing these, so I want to change up my steps, let them. These are not set in stone. All goals are definitely flexible and all of our steps are flexible. I know I change my goals all the time personally. So definitely need to let our students do that as well. So we got to remember they are flexible, and just let our students know that as well. So once we have tracked our quarterly goals, then we're thinking about our standard goals. So we in our district do standard-based grading. So our students, by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're very familiar with what our numbers mean, but we have a key over here just so that they know and they can correlate the color to their grade number. But in the beginning of the year, we always have that conversation as a refresher of just, okay, what do our scores mean? Just that way they understand what the data is that they're getting. Because if they're not understanding what a 2 means, then all of this doesn't actually matter. They need to understand what the scores mean and how they can continue to improve. And so this roadmap is a great way for them to do that. So it has all of our standards. We break it up by quarter just so it's easier to fit onto a slide. And we include the standard, and then we also include the learning targets for that standard. That way our students are understanding why they got their score that they get, because they can read these learning targets and be like, oh, I can do this piece, but not this piece, which is very empowering and it's very empowering for that student to be able to know what they continue to work on. So after we have completed the unit on that standard, after we've taken our post-test, then I set out a day to where I will pull students back and I'll give them their grade and we'll talk about each standard. So I personally normally do these on a Tuesday. That way it just kind of gives me some time to make sure I have all of their grades in and make sure I have everything together so that I can quickly and efficiently have conversations with these students and pull them back to my table and do roadmaps. Now, sometimes I don't get to all of them in one day, and that is totally okay, just as long as you're keeping it up to date. So I'll just make sure that I get to it by the time we're doing our next standard. So what I do is I'll just tell them that I'll pull them back to the table and I'll be like, okay, this is what you got in that standard. They'll color it in. And then we'll have the conversation about, okay, so this is why. So this student who was yellow, which is a 2, which means that they need to continue to work, that they were missing big parts of that standard. So then maybe they were just missing the answering the text specific questions. Maybe they were missing that whole part of that standard. So I would have a conversation with that student about how they can improve and what they were doing well at in that standard and what they still need help on. So that way that student knows how they can continue to improve and what steps they need to take. Because just because one day it's yellow, that doesn't mean that they can't go back. They can't do some of our spiral review activities and change that color. And that is one of my most favorite things about our data notebook. And this roadmap is pulling students back and be like, look, like you were a 2 here, you were yellow, but you have been working hard. You've been showing mastery in these ways. So now you're a green or now you're a blue. And that look on students' face when they can understand like, oh, look, I've grown. I have mastered this standard now is awesome. I love this roadmap because it is so easy for students to be able to see the standards that they have mastered and what they still need to continue to work on. And hearing those conversations with my students, they'll be like, oh man, like I have 1 green, but the rest are blue. So I need to be working on RL7 just to make sure I can get the rest blue. And it's just so empowering for those students because they are self-motivated and they are engaged and they know the steps they need to take in order to master all of those standards. So it is very awesome as a teacher to watch your students do that all on their own. And it is just amazing to see, especially 3rd graders, because people will be like, oh, like they're 8, they can't do this. But really they can. And as long as you are helping them along the way and you're explaining exactly what everything means, they understand and they want that control and they want to do their best, and they will as long as you are helping them along the way. So this is one of my other favorite parts of our data notebook is this pre and post test graph. So we pre-test every single standard just so that way we know what learning targets our students need the most. And then we also post test them. And we do this in order to show growth for our students so that we can see what learning targets that they still need help with. And it's so we can personalize and differentiate for every single student. So this graph is actually a sheet, a Google Sheet. So if you hit this open source, I already did it because my computer's a little bit slow. It'll take you to the Google Sheet. So what I do is I upload this Google Sheet into Google Classrooms, and it automatically makes a copy for every student. In the very beginning, when we're setting up our data notebooks, I teach them how to insert the graph into their Google Slide data notebook, and then that's it. So once I give my students a pretest, once they get a score, my students know once I hand it back to them, they need to go put it in their data notebooks. So all they do is they type a score here, and then they hit enter, and you can see the graph updated here automatically. And then when we go back to our data notebook, it has this update button. So then you update it, and then there's the score already in our data notebook too. That way it's all in one place and it's quick and easy for them to see. I love this graph because it is very easy for us to have those conversations of growth and not just mastery, because I think it's very important to celebrate with students about growth as well. Even if that student hasn't mastered those standards or hasn't shown mastery on any standard, doesn't mean that student isn't growing. And this is a great way to be able to have that conversation with those students and making sure everybody is feeling good about themselves because they have shown growth. And I love it because it is a great visual for my third graders to be able to see quickly. And it's easy for me to be able to say, all right, pull back your standards data. Let's see what's happening. And it's a quick visual for me to also have those conversations with those students. So again, it was very important to track that data in an easy way for those students. So then once we have seen our standards data, then we'll also set our goals based on it. So after we take our pretest is when we'll set our standards goals. So they've taken their pretest, they have gotten their score, they've put it in their graph, then they know to go to this goal slide and to set their goals. So their goal may be based off of a score that they want to achieve, or it may be, okay, I was reading that pretest and this question asked me about a certain topic and I have no clue about what that means. So then they may set their goal to learn what that vocabulary or that topic means. And so, which this is really awesome because those students know then, like, they are specifically looking for that piece of that learning target, and they already know, okay, I don't know this, so let me really focus on this. So it really gets those students thinking about those learning targets before you even introduce them to them. So then once they've set their goal, then we learn it, then we come back after our post-test and we think, did we meet our goal, yes or no? And then did we grow? Because again, we want to also focus on growth and not just mastery. And then we think, how can you continue to improve on this standard? Because even if they met their goal, even if they showed mastery, that doesn't mean that they are done learning on that topic. We want to teach our students that they can always be learning, that they can always do better, and to continue to push themselves. So we will think of these different ways that we can improve on this standard. And just like with our goal setting for our quarterly data, when we first start this, we will make a list and we'll talk about different ways that you can continue to improve. But by the third or fourth standard, they are doing this independently. They know we give them time after our post-test to fill this out. And then we also give them time after we do our learning roadmap and put in that score to make sure they have all of this stuff filled out. So they do it independently. I know those students, I'll walk around and I'll help and I'll pull back to my table and have those conversations with them just to make sure that they are on the right track. But for the most part, my students, I give them their data back and they go and they fill in the rest. So some other things that we track in our data notebook is we do multiplication facts. Some of our students do division facts. So we track that in our data notebooks. Pretty much any kind of data we put into our digital data notebooks, just so it's all in one place. So we'll have our students set reading goals with how many books they want to read that 9 weeks. And we have them track that in their data notebook. We will, this year, we're going to track some character goals. We're going to do some different things, but it's all in their digital data notebook. So it's all in one place for them. So they know exactly where to go to find their data and to see their goals and to see what steps they need to take. That way they're not looking around in 5 different places and they're confused and they just give up. So our data notebooks are really long, but it's worth it to have it all in one place for that student so that way they know where to go. So some different things, some different ways that we use that data in our classroom and to help them manage their learning is through math fact practice. So we have our students practice their math facts every single day. So instead of telling them exactly what to do and them doing the same thing and getting bored, we give them a choice. We look at their learner profile and see what ways they learn best, what activities they enjoy, and we incorporate that in our fact practice. So we had students who enjoy watching videos and singing songs, and then we included vocabulary. We have students who enjoy playing games, so we incorporated flashcards with family members, make it a game. I tell my students, especially when I know they have older siblings, I'm like, challenge your brother, challenge your sister, and make it fun and see who can win. And so just different ways to incorporate that. Now, I'll have students and I'll even have parents be like, what facts do they need to be practicing? And that's where I always refer them back to their data notebook. So one great thing about their data notebook being digital is that they can take it home with them. All my students know how to get into their Google Classroom to find their data notebook, and they can show it off to their parents. They can show off all their goals and all of their data. So that way parents always have that information, always have that right at their hands as well. And they feel informed, and it empowers those students to be able to tell their parents about their goals and about what they're doing in the classroom and be able to talk about it. And it keeps that relationship between me and the parent and the student really strong, because everybody is on the same page about what's happening in the classroom. So another way we provide choice and let our students manage their own learning is through how they respond to their reading. So we don't have any kind of program like AR. So what we did is we call these our book finishers. Once they finish a book, then they have the option to complete one of these 12 activities. So this is housed again in Google Slides, and we have a template slide at the very end, and we have a template of this so that we can show you a little more in depth. But what they do is they set a goal for what they want to do for that 9 weeks, and then they're going to be choosing from these 12 activities to show that they have read their books to meet their goals. So all of these activities are standard aligned. So my students will look at their learning roadmaps and their standards data to see, okay, what standards do I need some more practice with? And they'll choose activities based off of that. These activities are also based off of student interests and learning styles. So I have one student this year who just loved to draw. So she would choose the create a comic strip sequencing the main events of the story a lot because that was her interest. Now, whenever I see a student choosing the same thing over and over again, I will encourage them to choose a different activity based off of their learning roadmap. But I also don't want to say you can't do that one ever again, just because that is something they are interested in. So I make sure they're not doing the same one over and over again, but I do let them repeat it, because if that's what they're interested in and if that's what's keeping them engaged, then definitely I'm going to let them practice that standard. So my students definitely have been more engaged in their reading responses and keeping up with it, because it's not the same thing every single time. It's not writing a summary or taking a quiz. It is their choice. They get to choose what they want to do. And these will also go and help change their standards. So if they focus on a standard they need more help with and they're showing mastery through these reading responses, then that can bump up their grade for that standard, for our standard-based grading. And my students love that as well, because they know they can use these to show mastery and to better themselves. So another way that we let students choose is through some small group signups. So these look different. These can look a lot of different ways. So most of the time when I'm doing guided reading, I am focusing on that standard that we're currently teaching in those learning targets. But if we have a review week or a shorter week, or if there's just a lot of stuff going on, then I will let my students do a guided reading sign up. So what I'll have them do is I'll offer 3 or 4 different standards that I will be teaching for that guided reading. I will have my students go back into that learning roadmap at their standards data and look and see which of them they need to choose or which ones they need to review the most, and I'll have them sign up. So these, both of them are just in Google Slides. And so I will sometimes have their names over here just as like a clip art, and that they can just drag it over and choose that way. Sometimes I will just have them type in the box in just the table, just type their name for what they signed up for. Now, in the beginning, a lot of times my students are just like signing up based off of where their best friends are. And so that's when I really have those conversations with those students. Okay, let's look at your data and let's see why you chose that. And if I have a student that, even if it's with their best friends, can explain exactly why their data shows it, then I'll let them stay. I don't ever say, no, this is where you need to go, because that student is not going to be interested in that group from the get-go. If they want to be in a different one, you make them go to this one, they're automatically disengaged. If I do believe that a student needs to be switched, I'll pull them back and I'll have that conversation looking at their data. And as long as me and that student are thinking about it together and thinking about their data, then that still keeps them engaged because they're like, oh yeah, you're right, I do need to be in this group. And it's not just you telling them, which automatically disengages them whenever everybody else had that choice. So some ways that I do signups for math is for my small groups, I'll let them sign up based on the learning targets and the learning progression for the week. So I'll offer the different learning targets and they get to choose which piece that they are really struggling with and they need more help there. I'll also, if I see that students are doing really awesome with the learning targets for that week and they don't really need that extra help, I will just do one for the standard for that week and then a couple of review standards. And again, they're looking back into their data notebooks, those learning roadmaps, and seeing what do they need that extra help with. And it is their choice. Some other ways that I've done signups is I've done writing conferences. If students need that extra support writing, I'll let them sign up and we will talk about their writing conferences. In our templates, I can show you some different ways that you can do these signups as well. But I think the signups my students love because they get to choose what their small groups are about. We also have 45 minutes of intervention time at the end of the day. We're very lucky to have that. And so during that time, I'll let my students sign up for what they need the most. So as a teacher, I'm looking back at their data and I'm thinking, okay, what are overall 2 or 3 standards that most of my students need extra help with, and then that's what I offer. So I am constantly looking at their data as well as they are constantly looking at their data, so that way everybody is getting exactly what they need. Because if I don't know their data, then I'm not going to be able to give them those options that they actually need. So one big way that we use students' data and students use their data to manage learning and learning is through their pathways. So after we do our direct instruction, while I'm doing my guided reading, my guided math small groups, my students are working through their pathways. So this year we flipped them to make them digital and we kind of fell in love. And so we're just going to keep them digital. And so what happens is after their pretest, they are set on a path based on those learning targets for that day. So our orange path are those students who still need some more foundational skills in order to understand that standard. And then our purple path is those students who are ready for that 3rd grade standard, who has that foundational skills and they're ready to learn. And then our green path is our path of those students who showed mastery on that pre-assessment, who already understands all of those learning targets, and we are enriching them. We are going deeper into that standard. Maybe they're doing a PBL on that standard, but they are just going deeper, or maybe we are accelerating them to a 4th grade standard or to another 3rd grade standard, but they've already shown mastery. So a student doesn't always stay on one path for the whole standard. So maybe a student's missing a piece of a learning target on Monday, but then on Tuesday they have that piece. So they can flip-flop between the paths, and they can also do this as you are working throughout it. So if I notice a student is doing really awesome, picking it up really quickly, then I may bump them up a path. And my students love doing that. That is what they work for. Because they understand how they get bumped, they understand what the paths are, they understand why they are put on each path, because they have their pre-assessment data. We have conversations about it as we're putting it into our data notebook, so they understand where they're at on the path and why. And so it's really empowering to see the excitement in students whenever they're normally a VIP orange and they get bumped up to the purple path, or throughout the week they've been working really, really hard and then get moved from purple to green, because they are so excited and they're so engaged and they're just so proud of themselves as they're doing it. So that's one way that we differentiate all of our students based on their data. So we will differentiate their direct instruction as well. Kaylee and I actually do some co-teaching where she will take one group, either the orange or the purple, and I'll take the other. And so we're teaching them all that third grade content, but for the orange group, we're putting in those foundational skills that they're missing, and we're going at a slower pace, or whatever it is that that group needs, they're getting it with that teacher. And then I'm teaching that standard and going at a faster pace and moving through with whatever this group needs. And then our green group is normally working either collaboratively on a project or working through some Google Slides or doing a flipped lesson. But everybody's also getting that differentiated direct instruction that they need to be successful for their work. So we just have this VIP is what we call it. And so this is their standard align work that is on that learning target for that day. So it is very specific to what we taught. So we teach them direct instruction, they practice it on their VIP. And then the next row we call PACE. And so that is just more of the whole standard. So it's what we've taught up in that standard there. We normally incorporate some digital activities that way. As you can see, is some IXL or Google Slides. We'll do some Google Forms or Splash Math or I know it, or whatever other programs that we have, or some other things that we've created, we'll put in there. And then our win, which I'll go a little bit more in depth to in a few minutes, is where we incorporate a lot more choice and collaboration and our spiral review there. So what our students will do is after direct instruction, we release them to their pathway. They know that they have these 3 activities to complete. They normally have an hour and 20 minutes to do that, as well as meet with us in our small group. So they pace themselves out. So they get to choose which activities in which order they get to do them, as long as they get all 3 done. As you can see, this person here completed this activity first, and then they went ahead and changed the color of it. So they'll change the color in that row in order to keep up with what activities they've done. And so in the beginning, to help students pace themselves out, we include a digital timer for 20 minutes on our pathway, because we tell our students each activity should take you about 20 minutes. If it's taking you 5 minutes, either you are rushing and not doing your very best, or it's too easy and you need to be bumped a pathway. Or if it's taking you longer than 20 minutes, then maybe it's just too hard and we need to be bumped back down the pathway. And so they use that to self-pace themselves. In the beginning, a lot of our students use it. But by the middle of the year, most of our students know how to self-pace and they do not use it at all. And so that's just a great way for students to be able to manage their own learning and to think how to keep themselves on track and pace themselves. And then they also keep up with which 3 that they're doing and making sure they're getting it all done. So the last thing is our WIN boards, which stands for whatever I need. So these are our standard review choice boards. So every single day they have this WIN and they get to choose which activities they do. So all of the activities are standard based. So as you can see down here on our ELA one, we've kind of broken it up by domain so that they have some choice in writing, language, vocabulary, or just a review standard. And then for math, we just incorporate all the different standards that they need more help with. So when we are planning these as teachers, we are thinking about, okay, what standards have they mastered? What standards do they need more help with overall as a class? And we're making sure we're incorporating that on there. And then we are also thinking about what is their learning styles, what activities do they enjoy, and what choices are they going to make? Because we want them to be reviewing all of these. So we want them to be engaged with them. And we don't want to just do the same old every single time. Now, this past year, my kids loved quizzes. They loved competing against each other to get the highest score. So every single week, you bet I had at least 1 quizzes on my WIN, just because I knew that that's what my students loved. It was a different quizzes topic every single week based on those standards they needed to review, but you better have the quizzes on there. And every single week, all of my students chose Sorry about that. All of my students chose that quizzes and they enjoyed it. So this is all based off of what they want to choose based off of their data. So I have them go back into that data notebook and I have them see what standards that they still need help with and they still need that review with, and they choose based off of that. So it's really important that you're having those conversations with those students. And again, they're not just choosing because their best friend chose it. And so I, throughout the week, will randomly call on students, call them back and be like, hey, when activity did you choose and why did you choose it? That way they know I'm holding them accountable and I am going to make sure they're looking in that data notebook and that they understand why they chose that activity. And if they said, well, I just wanted to play a game with so-and-so, then I'm like, okay, we're going to choose a different activity based off of what our data needs. So it is all about that data, but it's also student driven. And they are matching their own learning and they're choosing what's best for them. Now, this is one of those standards that our students need some more review with. That's where over here in the corner, you can see we've included some different supports there for them. So maybe there's area and perimeter on here, and I know a lot of my students struggle with that, so I include a vocabulary, or maybe I have an anchor chart link. But just providing those different supports so that way they aren't just doing activities incorrectly. I also encourage students to ask each other. So that's one conversation I have a lot with my students is how to help each other. I'm not just going to tell each other the answers. You're going to really talk them through and making sure they're doing the right steps and helping them understand, because it not only helps the student who is struggling, but it also helps that student who is explaining to make sure they fully understand. So we just gave you a lot of information right off the bat. So some places to begin is to start simple with that data notebook. So I definitely encourage you to have some kind of learner profile, because it makes it easy for you to refer back to include your student interests, and it helps your students reflect on themselves and what their interests are, and then choose one set of data to track. So whenever we first began with our digital data notebooks, we only tracked our quarterly data. So this is kind of just an example of what it looked like. So we had that All About Me page for their learner profile. And then we thought about the end of the year goal. And then we also thought about that quarterly goal. And so that was it. That was all we tracked. We put that graph in there. And then that's what we personally focused on. And then we also have their math facts. So whatever helps you be comfortable is what you need to do. Making sure that you as a teacher know how to manage it and what you want to do. And you getting comfortable explaining and keeping up with it is where to start. And then once you get comfortable with just that one set of data, then you can start inserting more. So maybe you don't want to do your quarterly data, but maybe you want to start with the 5 most important standards, or pick out just a couple of them that you want to focus on, and go from there. And then definitely have that time or that day where you're going to update that data notebook. So like I said, I like to do mine for my standards data on Tuesdays. And then once I get their quarterly data back, after I've dissected it, then I know that next week, that's when I'm going to give it to them on that Tuesday. So just making sure you know when you're going to do it, and just keeping it simple for you to start at. Oh, sorry.
Now, as far as where to begin with adding student choice to your classroom, keep it simple. We started with adding journal topics first based on student interests and things that we saw our students enjoyed. So just giving them the choice of the journal topic that they're going to write about for the week really empowers your students and really gets them, involved in their learning and interested in it, because they want to write about what they're writing about, and it's not just something that you've told them they have to do. The next place that's really easy to start too is our early finishers boards. So that's just an easy way for you to incorporate some kind of choice for you to help your students meet their personal goals, their academic goals, enrich their learning in some way, and give them a choice of something to do besides just go practice math facts or just go read silently. Yes, we do incorporate those onto our early finishers boards for our students who enjoy doing those things, but that's not what everyone in our class has to do. And we found that our students are more invested in their learning when they do have the choice of what they're going to do to enrich their learning after they're finished. Fact practice was another easy way, just finding different games or ways for students to practice their facts, because not all students are going to learn the same way, and not all students are going to remember those facts the same way. So giving them all of those different choices is definitely an easy way to begin in class and at home. And then their reading response, giving them a choice of the different activities with different standards aligned behind them. That's an easy way for your students to get invested in their reading and showing their comprehension, because like Emily said, they don't just have to write a book report, or they don't just have to take an AR test. They've got some way that they are interested in to show you what they've comprehended as they read that story. So just try to make sure that you can incorporate as much choice as possible into your class, and that's really going to get your students invested, and that's going to get them to manage their own learning in some ways in your classroom.
Oh. So sorry, I was muted. So like I said, we have a templates, and there's our Bitly. And so we included our presentation link again. So we included another example of a digital data notebook that you can do. So a website with some different hyperdocs, that templates that you can pull from. We've incorporated that WIM board that went over. The book finishers template is in here, as well as some other different choice boards that you may want to incorporate. We've given examples of different signups through a Google form, a Google Doc, Google Drawings, and then a writing conference template. We, like I said, also do our signups in Google Slides. And then someone asked about our journal process. So I just kind of typed it up quickly here. We're going to have to reformat that because I did it on my phone, so I wasn't able to format it very well, but we'll reformat it to make it look cuter in a few minutes. But that's all there for you guys as well. So do you guys have any questions for us? And then if you guys have any questions, I'm also going to put up the scan for you guys to scan and get your CEUs. And I also want to thank everybody for being here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And yes, definitely email us if you guys have any questions. Our emails are in that second slide up there, as well as our Twitter. If you're on Twitter, you can reach out on there as well. But we're definitely happy to help, and we can put there's also a feedback form. Kaylee, can you put that in the chat? So this process has been long, and I'm constantly still changing our data notebook. So like I said, when we started, it was just that quarterly data and stuff like that. And that was probably 3 or 4 years ago. It was definitely before Kaylee joined the third grade team with me. And it's just kind of slowly grown from there. So we did quarterly data, and then we inserted some standards data, and then we inserted the graphs. And so just the other day, we were talking about the presentation, and we came up with another idea that our data notebook needed a table of contents because it's so long. So our data notebook is still not set in stone. It is constantly changing, and as we're getting more data, and as we are understanding our data more, we are incorporating that. Yeah, I was just like really excited about the table of contents idea. And I don't know how I hadn't thought about it before, but Yeah, so that's now in there. We also put in some badges just to make our like multiplication data cuter, and some character badges. So we are constantly evolving our data notebook still, but it definitely has been a process just as we get new members on our third grade team also, and as we are just getting comfortable doing it ourselves. So data notebooking is a school-wide thing here at Shuford. So not all of our data notebooks are digital. I know K2 is more paper pencil just because it's easier for them to keep track of. And then 3.5s are digital. So it looks different every single year, but everybody is doing data notebooks. So if there is an error, you can use this bit.ly down here at the bottom. And then the templates bit.ly. There is a server error. Did the bit.ly, oh. I don't know what to do about the service error. Is it working on the feedback? I can email the people of NC Bold and just tell them that our session, it was all given a service error. And then you guys will probably be able to come back to it later. I don't know if NC Bold is having issues all around. Okay, so it's probably just their server. So you'll probably just have to come back to this presentation to do it when their servers are back up. I'm going to email now and see if I can get any information. Well, thank you all for coming. We are here. If you guys have any questions, you feel free to email us as well if you guys have any questions. Well, thank you all again. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and email us. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your sessions at NC Bold.